Author opinion of Dennis Keen at the History, Geography and Architecture, Culture and Life Manners of Kazakhs in the program Discovering Kazakhstan.
Salam, привет, and hello. I'm Dennis Keen, and today on Discovering Kazakhstan, we will be discovering the sacred landscape of Mangostau. A huge desert region next to the Caspian Sea in the west of the country, Mangoshlak is famous for its magnificent cemeteries where Kazakhs have revered their ancestors for centuries, and for its underground mosques, which were once centers of Sufism. Come along as we explore this spiritual center of Kazakhstan. We've now driven 17 kilometers out of the provincial capital of Aktau, and we haven't seen much but simple homes and camels along the roadside. And then out of nowhere, a kind of oasis, the city on the steppe. It's a necropolis, translated literally as the city of the dead. It's often said that Kazakh nomads lived simply during life, but grandly after death. And these massive cemeteries scattered along ancient trade routes throughout western Kazakhstan are a testament to this fact. The first necropolis that we're going to be visiting is named after a famous holy man named Koshkar Ata. Legends say that Koshkar Ata was a spiritual teacher who traveled to these parts from the ancient empire of Khorasan. He was so powerful, some say, he could understand the language of animals. Others say that deer would sacrifice themselves to him and he would survive off their meat. A sign at the front of the necropolis suggests that local Kazakhs have been using this place as a burial site for more than a millennium. But what's striking is that some of the newer structures, like those that you can see behind me, are not all that different than the oldest. There's a certain very simple, conservative design that has been maintained through the ages. If you wander off the path in this oldest part of the necropolis, you'll find all these stones scattered about. And it's often hard to even know whether it's just an old rock covered in this kind of orange moss or whether it's in fact a grave site. With this one, we can be quite certain because it's a very characteristic shape and size. It's called a sanduk tas. This kind of cylindrical-like sarcophagus was apparently used to mark the graves of unknown soldiers. Mangostau is a part of Kazakhstan famous for the tribe Adai, a group of people who are famous for being fierce warriors. So it's not surprising that when I was looking at this gravestone, you can see a sword and an axe, these weapons showing that this once belonged to some famous Adai warrior. The central monument in this most ancient part of the necropolis is this sheep figure, what they call Koshkar Tas, which means ram stone. And on the ram here we can see an Arabic inscription and those same weapons that we saw on the Sanduk Tas. But if you come around to the other side of the ram, we'll see a clue that this is actually maybe perhaps not that ancient, because right there, look at that. You have a gun inscribed right into the stone. At the Koshkar Ata necropolis, we came across a tourist from Hungary, Clara. It's nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
So what attracted you to this place?
To be honest, we just passing through Octo for a few days, and then we saw in the book that there are a lot of necropolises around here. And we wanted to see some of them, but it seemed a bit more complicated because you don't really speak good Russian.
Yeah.
And it was difficult, so finally we ended up here as one of, like, close to Octo, actually reachable, accessible. So, yeah.
And what do you feel about the atmosphere here? What are your thoughts when you're in this kind of sacred place?
I wish I knew more about it, but there's not much information. At least I haven't found too much. So yes, I wish I knew the motifs and more things about it. Yeah, and the reasons why they built them here.
To me, I think that's kind of part of the appeal, is the mystery. As you come to this place, and we don't know who this is for. We don't know, why it was put here. It's like Stonehenge, It's this kind of mysterious place carved out of stone. And there's more questions than answers, but that's kind of part of the journey.
Yeah, probably, That's why we are here. We like adventure, and I always want to know more, especially things I don't understand. So, yeah, I might come back maybe one day with more knowledge.
Yeah. Well, let's keep exploring. Enjoy the rest of your trip. Our Hungarian friends went their own way, and we drove further from civilization, looking for the spirit of Mangostal in the steppe. It's a humbling sensation to be out here on the vast Eurasian steppe, this flat grassland that runs all the way from Hungary, thousands of kilometers, over to Mongolia. You're out here and you can just feel the distances, you can feel the empty space, and more than anything, you can feel the presence of the big blue sky, what Kazakhs once called Tengr. Their belief system was called Tengriism, and it revolved around a reference for the natural world. And when we're out here on the steppe, it just seems obvious. The sky here is all-encompassing. It controls every aspect of a nomad's life as they roam through this vast space. And so one can only imagine that they would turn their faces up to the heavens and ask for favors and fortune. In a place that's as special as Mangostal, so imbued with history and meaning, it's often hard to tell what exactly is sacred and what is not. So we were coming down this dusty road, noticing this large limestone mountain on the steppe. And it immediately reminded me of these kind of rock columns that I would find in Mongolia that were stacked to reach to the sky and connect to the heavens. And surely I thought this must be some kind of spiritual object. But our guide has in fact told us that this is simply a landmark for passing shepherds so that they don't lose their way as they're herding their flocks out on the featureless steppe. We've arrived at one of the most sacred places in all of Mangostal. It's called Sultan Epir. It's named after a holy man who came from a special lineage of Sufi masters. His father studied with the most famous of all Sufis in Kazakhstan, named Ahmed Yasawi. Ahmed Yasawi's mausoleum in Turkestan is now a major site of pilgrimage, and locals in Mangostal treat this place with a similar reverence. There are many saints in Kazakhstan, but what makes Sultan Epir special is that he's considered the patron saint of fishermen, many of whom plied their trade on the nearby Caspian Sea. We can see these posts here at the special shrine that are said to represent the mast of a sailor's ship. Other people say that there's 7 of them, to represent 7 local saints whose names have been lost to time. Nowadays, Sultan Epir is known not just by fishermen who come from salty seas, but by pilgrims who come for this place's crystal clear well water. The method for getting the water has been the same for centuries. You lower down a bucket, pull it up, and have a drink. From the well, there's a pump that moves the water over here to a trough. It's for local animals, for sheep and camels, and in this case, it's horses. They've just trotted up here, and they're a little bit shy because they have the young ones here in the late spring, but it's truly magical to see them here having an evening drink. The landscape here is really spectacular. The barren steppe here gives way to these chalky cliffs and the canyon below. And the spring down there creates this kind of oasis here that nestles right up to the Sultan Epir well. I can see how life on the steppe must have been hard for Kazakh nomads, and a kind of water source like this well truly would have been seen as a source of sacred vitality. Between the well and the underground mosque at Sultan Epir, there's this otherworldly landscape, this kind of natural labyrinth that's been carved into this soft sedimentary rock by the elements through the ages. It's an amazing place just to walk, get lost, and collect your thoughts. First and foremost, Sultan Tepe is known for being home to one of Mangustao's many underground mosques. We'll see what that means in a second, but even this above-ground structure that we have here is quite impressive with just how well it mimics the form of the surrounding canyon. They use, of course, the very same natural rock that you can find in this entire area, and it perfectly blends in with its surroundings. Here is the portal down into the mosque itself. Come along and come see what lays beneath. Historians say that in the Middle Ages, one spur of the Silk Road went through these deserts of Mangustau. And with the camel caravans came masters of Sufi Islam, bringing their own version of this ancient religion. And one thing they were known for was building what we now call underground mosques. Imagine this entire cave here carved away by hand. These columns now holding it up almost perfectly circular. It's awe-inspiring to imagine how this must have been done. There's a special atmosphere down here as well. It's almost perfectly dark, except for a few sun rays that manage to come down here through these columns that reach up to the world above. In places, the ceiling is so low that we have to get down on our haunches just to navigate through the different quarters. From here, we're moving from one room deeper into the underground mosque to another chamber. Suddenly you enter this chamber and you can stand up and you can breathe. And you can see how high these walls are, going up to this hypnotic portal that lets in the sun's light. People use this light to read the Arabic inscription here over the door, and I imagine to recite prayers from this cloth-bound Quran. But this room with the Quran is only the penultimate chamber. One last room is left, the most special in this entire underground mosque. To get there, we have to get down on our knees and crawl. Here, deep in the earth, in a space just large enough for a prayer rug, a special room where a Sufi could come and devote himself to his calling. Near the necropolis of Sultan Tepe, you will find the necropolis of Kente Baba, with mausoleums and gravestones built somewhere from the 10th to the 15th centuries. Standing guard at the entrance are some sun-dried ram's horns, long a sacred symbol for Central Asian people. In the graveyard, we can see the same long stone grave markers, the sanduk tasses that we saw at Koshkar Ata. We can see that same kind of sword symbol telling us that this was once a great warrior. But I noticed that some of the other sanduk tasses have these mysterious symbols on them. This one, for example, some kind of circular symbol, something resembling a key or some kind of scissors. It's really hard to say. Archaeologists can tell us that sometimes these symbols will tell us about the tribe of the person here, in which case it's called a tamga. In other cases, these symbols will tell us about this person's profession. The main thing to see here are these kind of four-walled mausoleums open to the sky called saganatams. They're built out of the classic building material of Mangostau, this kind of fossil-rich limestone called rakushechnik. If you look closely at this kind of soft rock, you'll see that it's full of all these little mini seashells. These were marine organisms that were living around an ancient sea that once was located in this part of western Kazakhstan called the Tethys Sea. This slice of history is now used to make the walls of this mini mausoleum along the gravestones themselves. In the second structure here, we can find several interesting details. Looking over the doorway, you can see this kind of inscription in Arabic using this very curious script that they call kufik. It's this kind of very square, blocky series of lines, perhaps telling us whose remains are contained here in this mausoleum. In the corner, I noticed that something has been burned. Some kind of offering has been made to the ancestors here, I presume. I also noticed that the masonry here is significantly more sophisticated than in the other structure. Here in the corner, you can see this kind of squinch as the square structure comes up into a circular opening. In the center of this whole thing, you have this beautiful pole where these little rags have been wrapped around it, offerings to the ancestors, to the spirits above. But perhaps the neatest thing in this structure is that there's a small little opening here in the corner with a staircase that goes up to the top. Up I go. It looks to be pretty narrow in there. The staircase is incredibly tight, so much so that you kind of have to shimmy up sideways. But then once you get to the top, you're rewarded with a bird's eye view down into the bottom of the Saganatam and a view of the steppe all around. I think I'll have a little seat and enjoy it while I'm here. The view from up here is truly wondrous. The emptiness of the steppe somehow soothing. Over on this side, we can see the beautiful edge of this large canyon, a lonely farmhouse out on the horizon. Over this way, 3 little bumps from some kind of mausoleum out in the distance. But for the most part, all we see here is just grasslands and shrubbery. And I can just kind of feel myself being very contemplative in this place, imagining how whoever's buried here, these ancient Kazakh ancestors, must have lived here in such solitude, with just this big blue sky and the sound of the wind and the chirping birds. On the side of the mausoleum, there are these petroglyphs that are quite unusual. They look almost fresh, and there's a real variety in the kind of symbols that are shown here, from some kind of tribal stamps that they would call tamga, to the nomad's favorite animal, the horse, the nomad's second favorite animal, the dromedary camel here with one hump. And here we have a very interesting symbol that likely represents the hand of Fatima, a common kind of charm found in Islam protecting this person. There's one more sacred place in Mangostal that I've been dying to see. A one-of-a-kind mosque built into a cliff with an ancient cemetery down below. They call this place Shakpakh Ata. Shakpakh Ata was said to have been a follower of Ahmed Yasawi, the famous Kazakh Sufi, whose shrine in Turkestan attracts thousands of visitors every year. Shakpakh Ata's prayer retreat, one of the oldest structures in western Kazakhstan, is quiet in comparison, but it was long a place where Sufis of Yasawi's lineage would come to be cured of ailments by spending a night in a cave. Coming up to the mosque, you're confronted with a strange sight. Built right into the rock face, a wooden door and a wooden window. All around the window, you see those same mystical petroglyphs showing the hand of Fatima, horses, and various Arabic inscriptions. Wow. Compared to the last underground mosque that we visited at Sultantepe, this place is expansive. You can see that it makes up 4 large chambers, and in the middle, a large portal out to the sky. In the entrance chamber, all along the wall, there are just tons and tons of these Arabic inscriptions, some clearly newer than others. The newer ones seem to be a little bit thicker and less subtle, whereas the older ones, like these on the column, have been worn by time. I noticed that in the wall, there are these strange little cavities. And at first, I wondered what they were for. But if you look, you can see this kind of blackened effect. And I would think that this is a place where they once burnt candles to light up this dark underground space. As we enter the main chamber, we see more evidence of this kind of charring from some previous fire. And there, engraved right into the char, another Arabic inscription. What's interesting is that if you look at the columns, almost every column in here is different. So this one has these jagged corners, but over on this side, kind of swirling spiral. In the chamber to the right, you can find these little niches, this one with a little pillow that tells me that this must have been a place where Sufi practitioners could come to meditate or to recite their prayers. We also see these kind of velvet green curtains, and we'll pull it back and reveal inside a peaceful prayer room. Over here on this side, the very same. Here in this last room, with the lights out, the candles lit, this vast space above me, I can only imagine how much work it took for somebody to carve all of this out by hand. They were making it to get away from the world, to find their own special space. And here, there's a special energy, a special atmosphere that any visitor to Mangostal should feel. Coming out of the mosque, you're reminded that Mangostal is rich not just in this long history of sacred spaces, but in natural beauty. And what's special is that it's a combination of those two. It's these special holy places that are in fact formed out of that very landscape. And I dare you to find anything like that anywhere else in the world. Thank you for joining me today on Discovering Kazakhstan. Until next time, Sao Bol, Baka, and goodbye.